Hello, this is DeMona's here, and now I've decided to change the nature of this joke of a YouTube channel that I have going on here. I decided that I'm going to talk you about movies that I just recently have seen. And I realized that there is already like 100,000 billion channels like this on the internet. But you know, what's one more? So why wouldn't I give my own personal opinion on stuff, since everybody else seems to be doing that as well. So with no further ado, let's go into the movies. And one film I just saw recently is called WB Blue and the Beaner, and it's here presented in this glorious VHS format. And as you can probably guess, it's from the 80s, it's a B-movie, it's from year 1988, so it's just in the golden zone of the crazy 80s kind of weirdness. And you know, it's a Finnish VHS, of course, because I'm from Finland, and it has a tagline here, and it says basically, they're the good guys but still be careful of them, which, you know, it's a very shitty tagline and it doesn't work any better in Finnish. It must be one of the worst taglines I've ever heard. Probably somebody came up with it in a hangover or something. But it's a very basic kind of plot. David Hasselhoff here and his two friends are kind of bounty hunters, and then Linda Blair, the girl from Savage Streets and you know, The Exorcist and whatever else, is kind of this young lady who's getting kidnapped by the Mexican drug cartel and being taken forcefully to Mexico. And then David Hasselhoff and his friends have to go and kind of rescue her for a reward. And you know, it's a very funny film. It has a lot of comedy in it, which is good, and a lot of kind of exploitation elements. There's nudity, there's people getting blown with guns and all that shit. So that's all good. I like that sort of stuff, and it's nothing groundbreaking, but I liked it. And one thing I want to mention that really doesn't have anything much to do with anything, but there's this kind of weird photograph here in the back, and I have no idea what that is. Like, that's nowhere in the movie. That's like some stock photo of what looks like the White House and an old car in front of it. And that, like, I don't remember anything like that in the film. So that's weird. But in the end, the movie kind of changes into this kind of modern western thing, which works really well. And there's actually some good stuff, like there's a helicopter, and you don't usually see helicopters in this kind of low-budget filmmaking. If you like cheap exploitation films, like a perfect movie for a hangover day, let's put it that way. And kind of grade-wise, I'm going to give it Helena Bonham Carter hugging a big fish out of 10 stars. So on to the next film, which is Bringing Out the Dead. And this is not usually my type of film. I'm much more of a kind of underground or exploitation or horror, fantasy, sci-fi, that sort of stuff kind of guy. But I do watch all sorts of movies. I just don't usually go for the big Oscar type things. But this was really good. I actually liked it a lot. And the only other Martin Scorsese film that I've really liked before this was Gangs of New York. And that was basically only because of the setting was so unique and funny and kind of weird, and it made me interested in the history of New York and all that stuff. So that was kind of a exception. To tell you the truth, I've not seen very many Martin Scorsese films. I've seen Taxi Driver like when I was in high school, and I didn't really like that then, so I should probably see that again to see if I've changed my mind. But this I really liked. And it has Nicolas Cage in it, which, you know, is one of those actors who you either hate or love, but weirdly enough I'm kind of in the between. I like him when he fits into the movie where he can just let go and be really bonkers and crazy and weird, like Bad Lieutenant New Orleans or something like that, or Face Off. Stuff where he can really kind of, there's no holds for him. He can do whatever he wants, basically. And this was kind of like that. He's this kind of ambulance driver man who is kind of tired of everything. His life sucks, but he has this inner drive to help people the best he can, and he doesn't even really know if he can do that, if he's actually doing any good, but he has to try because there's nothing else for him. And that was kind of a unique role, but it fit him very well. And it also has other good actors, like John Goodman is in it, and he's this kind of also an ambulance driver who doesn't really care about anything. And then there's this one guy who's this kind of I think it was Ving Rhames playing him, who was this kind of a Jesus freak dude who just, you know, blathered on and on about stuff that nobody should really give good goddamn about. And, you know, Nicolas Cage is just kind of losing his mind slowly when the movie goes on. And that's really good. It's much more of a character study than a traditional story. So if you like that kind of stuff where you don't really know anything that happens next, like you cannot guess what's happening next, that's a really good choice for a movie like that. And it's done in 1999, and that seemed to be a good year for Hollywood movies. A lot of classics came out that year, like Fight Club and The Matrix and whatever you have. So, you know, this was really good, and grade-wise I'm going to give it The Legs of Anne Hathaway out of 7.5 stars. Next we have Class of Nuke'em High, and this I've seen many times, but I just saw it recently and I hadn't seen it for a long time before. And it's a Troma movie, and I'm a big Troma fan. I love most of their stuff, and Class of Nuke'em High might actually be my favorite. And that's because I love this kind of weird subgenre of the 80s, of the kind of crazy high school movies, like Savage Streets, which also has Linda Blair in it, funnily enough, or Class of 1984. Stuff like that, where people are in high school, but it's a very kind of strange place. There's just, you know, punk rockers and drugs and violence and people getting, you know, punched in the face in the hallway all the time, and, you know, just this kind of crazy, almost dystopian view of the high school life and society. And Class of Nuke'em High is kind of a Troma version of that, and of course because it's Troma it has to be even crazier than the other movies of that genre, and it's really kind of nice. In that way, there's a monster in it that doesn't really have anything to do with anything, and there's these kind of really crazy punker types, like this guy right here, who's this kind of a guy who has like bones in his face and these kind of big rings on his noses, and he has like these kind of like mouth protection stuff in his mouth all the time, and it makes no fucking sense, but it's funny. And there's like this lady who has a Hitler moustache and all that, and they're of course the bad guys. And then there's like these normal youngsters who are the good guys, but of course the movie doesn't really concentrate on them at all. It's all about the villains, and that's something I usually like a lot in movies. And this is actually a Swedish DVD I have, and the reason for that is that there's a lot of extra material, like comment track by Lloyd Kaufman, the co-director of the film, and like other behind-the-scenes documentaries and all that stuff. And for whatever reason, they left all of that out in the Finnish, from the Finnish DVDs. I don't really understand that, but the Swedish one is just as good, of course. It doesn't have Finnish subtitles, but I don't really need those anyway, so who cares. It's a really good film, so if you haven't seen that, and if at all you have this kind of love for 80s weirdness, this is right up your alley, man. I mean, it's a great film. I really love it. I would even say it's the best Troma film. I like it more than Toxic Avenger, and that's something that you're not supposed to say about any film ever. So, you know, I give it Aunt May being the herald of Galactus out of all the stars in the sky. Okay, and lastly, the last movie we have this time is The Fast and the Furious, the original one. And I don't have it anymore because I sold it out because it was a piece of shit. But it wasn't such a piece of shit that I thought it would be. It wasn't quite as horrible as I thought. I was afraid that it was going to be this kind of like a many modern action movies are, that it's just going to, everything is going to be done with CGI, and it doesn't really have a plot, people are just running from one video game scene to the next. And it wasn't like that, so I have to give it some props for at least not being complete piece of shit like that. But it wasn't much better though. And the only reason I watched it was because it has Michelle Rodriguez in it. And I'm fucking crazy for Michelle Rodriguez. And I'm one of those guys who, you know, if there's a certain actor or actress who I really like, I have to see all their movies. Like, I don't have to hurry about them, but you know, whenever I have the chance, I have to check them out, even though they look like the worst trash imaginable. And Michelle Rodriguez is one of those persons for me. And she has already tormented me with Resident Evil movies, and now with the Fast and the Furious. And I actually try to have an open mind about the film, especially when I found out that it actually has a plot in it, that it isn't just, you know, running from one effect scene to the next. But the plot wasn't any good. Like, there was nothing, it wasn't really about anything, if that makes sense. Like, the stakes have never been lower than in that film. Especially when you and you had these most annoying main characters. I don't like Vin Diesel. I think he's boring. Like the old action stars from the 80s and so on, Arnold Schwarzeneggers and Sylvester Stallones and Dolph Lundgrens, and they all had charisma. Like, maybe they weren't like great actors, or at least they weren't known as great actors, but at least they had charisma. And they looked good in camera, they looked tough, they looked rough. Vin Diesel just looks like he doesn't even exist. He's like, whoa. He didn't know how to be in front of a camera. And neither do I. But, you know, I'm not getting paid for, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars for this. So, you know, that kind of makes sense that I wouldn't, you know. And the other guy, who's the guy that has now died, like Paul Walker, I think his name is, he was so generic. He was like, you know, Orlando Bloom light or something like that. I don't know, I don't realize what anybody could see him. I mean, I guess he's like a good looking dude, and that's all fine and good and nothing wrong with that. But there are good looking dudes who can actually act, you know, like Brad Pitt or somebody like that. Well, that's an old example, I know. But, you know, I'm sure they exist somewhere. You don't always need to hire these fucking blocks of wood who don't know what they're doing. And also script-wise, the movie, it just didn't give them anything either. It has this very kind of basic plot how, you know, Paul Walker is a police officer, and then he infiltrates into this kind of criminal organization of Vin Diesel's. But it didn't really lead into anything. Like, there's this kind of course there's this kind of a loyalty skirmish going on, that is he going to tell, you know, Vin Diesel about who he really is because he's in love with Vin Diesel's little sister, or is he going to, you know, give them up to the law and all that stuff. And none of that really, like, he does his decision, but we really never kind of find out why, or, you know, what's really eating them. It's just they're not really characters. They're just, you know, these kind of puppets that you move from one place to the other. And I don't like that. You know, as much as I love like grindhouse and exploitation movies, I think there should be something that you could care about, especially if the movie is as ballless as this was. Like, this was a fucking castrated movie. There's no blood in it, there's no nudity in it, there's like nothing really all too exciting about it. There's these endless racing sequences, but none of them are even like filmed or edited in any kind of passionate way. They just exist because I guess that's what people want to see now or something. And I think that really sucked. So, you know, not really all up my alley, I think. If I was like a big car guy, I guess I could have like maybe gotten something out of the movie. They talk about cars a lot in it, and, you know, show these kind of, you know, that was like the most erotic part of the movie, showing these kind of gleaming things made out of metal and just, you know, kind of glistening in the sun and fucking being tough and rough and kind of smooth fucking metal things. Like that was almost like a sex scene in the movie when they showed these cars. But I'm not into cars, so I didn't really get that either. So, you know, maybe if you like cars, maybe this can, you know, offer you something at least. But to me, it was a piece of shit. It wasn't quite as bad a piece of shit as I thought, but it was still a piece of shit. I'm going to give it bald Natalie Portman upside down being nibbled by sharks out of 75 billion stars. Okay, so that's it. I hope somebody enjoys this. I don't know if anybody will, maybe not. But you know, be sure to, you know, leave your comments and what have you. And you know, if somebody likes this, maybe I'll make more of them, or maybe I'll make more of them anyway, even if nobody does, because this is kind of therapeutic to talk about movies. Because usually when I talk about movies, I have to talk to them to other people, and then they can, you know, it becomes an argument. Now it's just my fucking monologue, and that you know, tickles my ego. So you know, if you like this, remember to put thumbs up and all that stuff. What you are supposed to do in YouTube, I guess. And you know, I also like books and comic books and TV shows, so maybe I'll talk about those too. Maybe not. Who knows? Who cares? Okay, thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.